Some of the things on these lists, I'll be honest, I haven't done some of them. I'm learning as well as you guys are learning, but we're also developing relationships in our community to help us to learn better. Some of the things on these lists are going to be talking about, essential oils and homeopathics. I am not a naturopath. I don't know all of the different homeopathics, but we have people in our community who do. So if these things really interest you, we can help to connect you to the right people in the right way. I myself, as the chiropractor, I pride myself on being an amazing adjuster and an amazing chiropractor, especially for kiddos. And that's where I believe that I get to shine my light and I get to be the best self. So when it comes to other things like nutrition and therapies and PT and OT and essential oils and homeopathics, while I may know some of those things, I usually refer those things to people who know a lot more than I do. I don't claim to be the expert in those, but I do claim to be an expert in health and wellness and well-being, and we're going to kind of build the story today so that you guys understand why this is important, right? So with that being said, let's talk about why we're standing here. How did we get here? As I mentioned, I've been in practice 20 years. I grew up in downtown Conway. So born and raised right here. I started my family here, and those two children you see between my wife and I, they are the reason we are standing here today. They are now 15 years old, and as I said, I've been in practice 20 years. The first early part of my practice, because of the way I was trained, I was very much a more pain-based, symptom-based chiropractor. We used different therapeutic modalities, things to help with pain and injuries and those kinds of things. And it wasn't until I had my own children that I started to shift and change the view in which I practice and became more into this more wellness-based approach as opposed to a symptom-based approach. We got enough people in this world that treat symptoms. I want to prevent them. I want to work to create a healthy community. So we have a motto in here that we grow healthy children. We don't fix damaged adults. Let's be honest, I still fix damaged adults. But I would much rather grow healthy human beings, okay? And these kiddos help me to see that. But the first year of their lives were riddled with ear infection after ear infection after ear infection after ear infection. They are twins. So, we jokingly say when they go into daycare, the first thing they learn to do is share. They share everything. Saliva, poop, viruses, you name it. And because they shared cribs and bedrooms for the first 5 or 6 years of their lives, maybe even 8 years, they shared everything. So when Macy came home with the first sniffle, which grew into the first ear infection, she shared that with Wyatt, who also grew into an ear infection. And we took them to the doctor, and what do you think the doctor did for them?
Antibiotics.
Gave them their first round of antibiotics. He said they'll be better in 7 to 10 days, and they were. Fast forward 3 weeks later, they come home with another sniffle, grows into a double ear infection. Now I have 2 kids with double ear infections. What did I do? Took them back to the doctor. Here's another round of antibiotics. On the 3rd round, it's, what antibiotics have we been giving them? Maybe we need to switch that antibiotic. So they start shifting antibiotics. That grows into wheezy bronchitis. Now you're getting the puffers, the nebulizers, the albuterol, the steroids on top of the antibiotics, and it happened over and over and over to the tune $20 copays, 1 month, $350.
And it's scary.
And it's scary. I remember the nights watching my children breathe. Just watching them breathe. Because you're afraid that they can't breathe, right? Checking fevers, consoling, holding. There were 2 of them. Dad didn't get a chance to sleep in, all right? I'm not saying I was there all the time. My wife was wonderful, but it was all hands on deck in our household, right? And so, in my frustration, being a chiropractor and knowing that I had no idea how to take care of my own children, because the extent of pediatrics that was taught at my school was a 3-hour lab with a doll baby. A 3-hour lab with a doll baby just gives no one the confidence of how to adjust an infant, much less how to even assess them. I don't even know how to check a baby. So I didn't know how to take care of my own children, and in the frustration, standing in the line in CVS at 38th Avenue, I threw my hands up and I walked out and said, "This is ridiculous. And I walked out to the car and I said, honey, can we just please take him to the chiropractor? I understand chiropractic is great for ear infections. Never seen it, just understand it. She said yes. I drove him right down the street, 10 blocks to Bobby Finley. He was on 48th Avenue. He probably had the most diverse practice in Myrtle Beach at the time, really centered in kids, and so he was the only person that I had heard that may be able to really potentially take care of my kids. So I knocked on the door. It was lunchtime. He answers the door with a sandwich in his hand. I introduced myself because I'd never met him. He said, David, I would love to help you with your kids. When would you like to get started? I said, I forgot to tell you they're in the car. He said, come on in. How's your wife about this? I said, she's scared to death, not gonna lie. My wife was very much into more Western medicine. That's why, immunizations, they were on the table back then. We immunized our kids to a point. That's another story. We did what our doctors told us to do. My wife was easy to go to C-section because she loved her doctor and she didn't trust anyone else. And he said, we're doing C-section for these babies, and we did C-section for the babies. There was not even a question because we trusted them. Fast forward, Bobby Finley goes, David, I know you don't know how to adjust these kids. I promise you, you do. You just don't know that you do. I'm going to help you, and when you're ready, you just take over. Visit 4, I took over and never went back to Bobby Finley. The cool part is my kids got better, okay? And that's what started our journey. When I say they got better, Macy, who was probably the worst in terms of symptomatology, 1 ear infection after that, never again. Albuterol, nebulizers, all those things went bad. They expired into the cabinet, okay? Wyatt never had another ear infection until recently. He had an external ear infection because he likes to play in the lakes in our neighborhood when he shouldn't be playing in the lakes in our neighborhood. Okay. But that's what started this process, because it number one, it showed me that there was a different solution. Our kids could be healthy and well. And then it made us, as a family, start to challenge what we knew to be the norm, the common, the sometimes overutilized, many times overutilized, to try a different route. Okay? And that different route we're going to share with you today. Okay? Today is really simple. My goal is to help you understand that we should honor the body. Okay? We are all born with this really cool, inborn, innate wisdom, and it's not by chance. Our body knows how to do the job that it was intended to do, and we're going to talk about that job today, and we're going to give you the science behind it. I'm not going to be the only one talking up here. I got a little video of an ER doctor that's going to back me up on a couple things, right? So it's not out there. It's just coming back to what we already know is very simple. Here's the problem. Simple is not always easy. Simple can be really hard. And it's hard because we have a lot of other influences of people, whether it be parents, friends, siblings, who look at you like you're crazy when you say, I'm going to honor the body on this one. Why would you do that? Just give them this. So we're going to talk about how we raise our kids in a healthy, natural way. Here's the big picture. In this office, I believe there are core pillars to our health, including kiddos, because kiddos are just small adults, right? So when we look at the big picture, I am a chiropractor, so it's no surprise that number one for me is going to be centered around the spine and the nervous system. For those of you who are new to this office, I have a very nervous system centric approach to what we do. Why? Most people know that we as chiropractors take care of the spine, but I'm not here to just crack and move bones, okay? We adjust the spine for specific reasons, and it's because of what the spine holds and because of what the spine supports, which is our neurology, our nervous system. When we adjust the spine, we change the nervous system. We influence the neurology. And the neurology is the master system of the body. Your brain is the primary controller of everything. It's how we experience our world and then how we adapt to our world. So we take in information, we make a decision, we send out outgoing signals so our body will do the best it can with what it's got in those particular situations, right? So number one, the nervous system is the boss, right? It makes sure that we are functioning to our full potential and our full power at any given time, all the time. That's number one. That is the core. I always then have other pillars. Eat well, sleep well, move well. So let's talk about movement a little bit. Life is motion. If we look back at societies prior to the last 100 years, we were movers, right? We were nomads. Our bodies were meant to walk across this earth. They were meant to till the soil. They were meant to harvest. We were evolutionarily designed to hunt and harvest. You know? So life is motion. Motion is life. When all motion ceases, we deceases. My little joke.
Dad joke.
Dad joke. But we're not talking about just for adults. This is for babies. This is for kids. This is for everybody. And we're going to talk about motion a little more in another slide. Sleep is everything. For ones with little infants, holy cow, how important is sleep? Not only to them, but to you. Yes,
What
exactly.
is sleep?
We just had a mom in here last week who, the first time in 13 months, her child slept more than 1 to 2 hours.
Wow.
Okay? In a stretch. Co-sleeping, breastfeeding throughout the night, and trying to figure out how to get some sleep. She came in as a new person. 6 hours of sleep, constant, uninterrupted. She was like beaming from ear to ear. That's how important sleep is. My wife, when my kiddos were little, I can't tell you the number of arguments I had with my brother and sister-in-law because they had older children, and I was inconveniencing them when they came into town because at 7:30 to 8 o'clock, we're back home to put the kids back in their bed. Why are you doing that? Just let them stay up. It's a holiday. Blah, blah, blah. You don't have to live with them tomorrow. I do. So my wife was I can't use these words anymore. She was just she was a sleep Nazi. But she really focused on sleep. We read the books on sleep. There's a study that basically took children and said, all right, we're going to see what 1 hour difference in sleep makes. So they took, when you do studies, you have what they call cohorts. One group goes over here and does this. One group goes over here and does this. They took these kids and said, all right, bedtime is normally, let's call it 9 or 8 for these children. We're going to have one cohort go to bed 30 minutes early, and we're going to have one cohort go to bed 30 minutes later. And they measured, and they lost like 20 IQ points because of 1 hour sleep difference. And the researchers here and the authors of the story basically said, we don't ever get that back. You think, oh, I'll just catch up tomorrow. No, the damage is done if you lost it, right? So sleep is uber important, and we need to honor that. That's when our body repairs. That's when it recovers. That's when it restores, okay? And then, part of tonight is all about, or today is all about talking about living clean. We live in a toxic environment, and most of that, you can see it. All you got to do is look underneath your kitchen sink or underneath your bathroom sink. So we as a family decided early on, we're going to pull all that stuff out, and we're going to try to find ways to clean up our living so that we're less toxic in this world. There's another study, I love studies, there's another study where they did cord blood samples. So they took a pregnant mom, she had the baby, and then they took a sample from the umbilical cord of the blood that was in mom being transfused into the baby. And what they found was that there were 287 different known neurotoxins isolated from that blood sample. 287 known, many of them carcinogenic, neurotoxins. So that means mom had an exposure, environmental exposure, absorbed those chemicals, and we're now then transferring them over to the baby in utero. Okay? We got to clean up our world. So living clean, kids and chemicals, they just don't mix. And that's not just the stuff under our sinks. Remember, we live in an allopathic medical world where it's just, let's just throw medicines at them, And so here, I'm going to jump up on a soapbox real quick. Please understand, recommendations for dosages of medications to anyone under the age of 18 is considered off-label use. Okay? So we have drugs in this country that go through FDA approval, and they say this drug is good for this. Anything outside of that is considered an off-label use. For instance, Viagra. Viagra was a blood pressure pill. They did the studies, and when they said, all right, we got all the information we need, guys, send it back, they wouldn't give it back. Why would they not give it back? Because they found out there was this really cool side effect that this blood pressure pill had, and their wives liked it. Now, the new use for Viagra changed. It's an off-label use. And we see that a lot in drugs. The reason I bring up off-label use is because they don't do studies on kids. It's unethical. So what they have to do is do studies on adults, and then they have to figure out what's the dosage going to be for the kid, and is it even going to be beneficial for the kid. You know, when you hear the warnings on commercials, and they say, you know, let's use an antidepressant medication. One of the major side effects for antidepressants is thoughts of suicide, usually in our young populations. Okay, so keep that in mind. Chemicals and kids don't mix. All right, we're going to jump into 7 steps today. All right, steps 1, 2, and 3 are the simplest, but we have littles in the room, so I love this. As a chiropractor, one of the easiest ways I get to evaluate littles like this is I ask mom, how are they eating? How are they sleeping? And how are they pooping? Because under 4 months, that's about all they do, right? They're eat, sleep, and poop machines, right? However, if they're not pooping on a regular basis, you know, it should be food in, food out. And if it's not food in, food out, we should have some at least justification for concern. We go to our pediatricians, and especially if they're breastfed, what do the pediatricians usually say when they're going to the bathroom every 3 days?
That's normal.
That's normal, right? It's not normal. That food should be going somewhere. That gut needs to be moving. Our gut is how we detoxify, guys, ladies and gentlemen. Now, obviously, breast milk, we would assume that we're absorbing more of that. So maybe we're not producing the amount of poop that we're taking in relative to breast milk, but we should still be pooping every day, okay? Sleeping, we should still be sleeping well. Now, there is this thing called sleep regression. Anybody heard of that? Anybody ever experienced it? Sleep regression is a real thing, but it's not that they don't want to sleep anymore. It's when their eyes come online. You know, when you've got this beautiful baby in your arms, and their nervous system is new and young, they can focus about 18 inches. Guess what? That's the distance between your eyes and their eyes when they're breastfeeding. They're memorizing your face. Okay? They're memorizing your face, and that's how they focus. But as their nervous system develops, you guys, I have some really cool pictures. I didn't put them into this today, but I have some really cool pictures of what the system of, you know, the nervous system is built of nerves, and it's built of connections. Those connections we call synapses. And the nervous system grows incredibly fast when we're tiny. So we have the most growth in the nervous system and the most connections being built 0 to 2 years old. Then 2 to 7, we have the next more massive growth. And after 7, they've proven that you've made every connection you will ever make in your nervous system by the age of 7, to the point that we actually start getting rid of connections that we don't need after the age of 7. We call it pruning. You literally will prune your nervous system and go, don't need that, let's get rid of it. That means we got to be really vigilant from 0 to 7, right? We're as brilliant as we will ever be by the age of 7 in terms of the physiology of our nervous system. And I have some cool pictures of that. But long story short, it guides these 3 processes: eat, sleep, poop. So we should be eating well, sleeping well, pooping well, all of which is governed by a crazy, incredible nervous system, right? Again, I told you that was the master system. In chiropractic, we have a lot of, you know, when we talk, especially to moms with littles, you know, when I think about the upper cervical area, this is ears, nose, and throat connection, or upper plumbing. We think of all the plumbing in the head and face that are geared to and are controlled by all of this upper cervical. We get into this mid-thoracic, and now we're thinking about upper gut things. So the babies that are colicky, gassy, burpy. This is now you know, gastroplumbing that may become an issue because of issues in the middle parts of the spine. When we get down into these lower parts of the spine, now we're thinking lower plumbing And if they're not pooping on a regular basis, maybe we can find the poop button. We actually have a joke, a running joke in here, but it's no lie. There is a poop button and we can press it. And when we press those poop buttons and we get that part of the nervous system functioning healthier, if we're not careful, they're using the changing tables, but there's usually a blowout before they get home. Okay? It's pretty darn cool. That even happens with our not quite so little babies too, right? Our little kids. But there are intelligent ways that the nervous system is designed. Think of it much like a fuse box. When we look at this, I love the fuse box analogy. It's the best analogy because obviously our brain is the computer. Think of that as the power supply to the house. And you know, when we look in the fuse box, we have all the switches. I love these spinous processes. To me, it feels like the switches in the fuse box. And it works very similarly because we have signals from the brain coming down through these nerves out to the body parts. And if this is out of a line and it's putting stress and tension on that nerve, well, whatever receives that nerve, it's like the fuse has been blown or the switch has been turned into the off position. Our job as chiropractors is to find the proper, specific, gentle adjustment to turn that back on and reconnect the brain to whatever that area controls, okay? So Eat, Sleep, and Poop are numbers 1, 2, and 3. They're really simple, but you know, we see a lot of this in our practice because we see so many children. So we're helping, you know, mom comes in and she's frustrated, we haven't slept all night. All right, great. We're gonna hit the sleep button. We're gonna hit the poop button. We're gonna do whatever we can to get those babies functioning better. Okay.
Can you hit all the buttons?
Sometimes.
Cool. Okay. Fantastic.
Now, as our nervous system grows and develops, we got Eat, Sleep, and Poop covered. Our babies at about 4 months, what do they start to do? Hold that head up, right? They get more head control, and we grow. Think of nervous system development as growing a brain. We're literally growing our brain. And we grow our brain bottom up, back to front. And what we mean by that is all of our reflexes and all of the centers that control our heart and our lungs and our digestion and all of those things that are so integral to life, they live way back down here in the brainstem of the brain. I call it the reptilian brain. It's basically the brain that if you think of evolution as it happens, if you believe in evolution, most people, I mean, there's ideas that, you know, we have the same reflexes that the lizards have. It's the reptiles, and it's the reptilian brain. But we as humans, we're given rational thought, right? And so we develop a forebrain as we get older. So all of those reflexes are here, and as we age, it grows into the ability to finally rationalize and have critical thinking skills and all of those kinds of things, right? Because when we're trying to tell our 3-year-old why they shouldn't throw blocks when their friends are around, you don't hit the rational brain because they haven't developed that rational brain yet. So we grow our brain bottom up and back forward, all right? But it grows based on how we move. So remember I said movement, life is motion, motion is life, movement is really, really big. And on the right side here, we have all of these cool movement, or what we call motor or locomotive milestones. So we know that, you know, first things what babies do is they get head control. So they start to hold that head up, and as they start to hold that head up, they're literally growing their brain. They go from holding their head up to starting to wanting to sit up. They start to notice, I have hands, right? As their eyes change at that 4 months, they're, oh, I have hands, and I have feet, and all of a sudden hands and feet are going in the mouth. They start to reach for things. They start to cross the body. We start with the core. They grow their core first, head first, abs. They're starting to try to sit up. They find their hands. They find their feet. Now we're starting to get all these peripheral organ motor systems connected. It's intelligent, and it's supposed to happen in a particular way. Then they learn to sit. They learn to sit unassisted as they get their more core stability. Then they do what? They go to their knees, and they learn to rock. Then they learn to crawl. Then they learn to pull up. They learn to, what do they call that? I just lost the word.
Shimmy?
No. When they hold on to things and then they walk by holding on to things. I'm gonna call it cruising, but it's not cruising. I lost the word. It'll come to me later. When they're doing all of these motions, they are literally growing in and starting to develop other systems. The motion is so important that when they start to hold their head up, they're starting to develop the drainage in their head. As they start to sit up and get into locomotive, they're starting to develop a lot of the motion through their gut. So we go immune, ENT, and respiration. When do we typically see those first colds and things happen? Right around that 3 to 4 months. There's also intelligent stuff happen because, we get our immune system when we're infants from mama. We get it from our breast milk, the colostrum that starts first and that grows into the breast milk. As you're starting to wean the child, oftentimes that can be as early as 4 to 6 months. Now they're starting to experience the world and they start building their immune system, and that's when they start getting those first ENT or respiratory infections. So we need to have them up and moving because movement is key. Our body has tubes in them. We have drainage that needs to happen, and that movement helps to promote that drainage. First through the immune system, then through the gut. Then those kiddos start to develop speech. Children with speech delays. Do you also notice it with motor delays oftentimes? Coordination?
Sometimes.
Okay.
Sometimes.
One of the things, we have categories of children who struggle. I try not to call names, right? We always say calling names is and diagnoses is not nice. We don't call people names. But we do have, when it comes to a nervous system that's out of sync, we have what we call our raging bulls, our drunken bulls, and our drunken raging bulls. The drunken bulls are the ones that lack a lot of that coordination. Sometimes as littles, they're what we call kind of floppy babies, low tone babies. They don't learn all that core stuff fast. They often are the ones that struggle a lot with those gut issues, those immune issues as well. And then of course we have the speech, the social, the behavioral growing into the emotional. So when we list these 1 through 8, think of that as just neurodevelopment. That's how we develop as a child.
What about the raging one?
Raging bull is just combinations of the two. I mean, that's your ADD, ADHD, OCD, uncoordinated, all of those things, okay? So, movement is key. Now, I share this part on the right-hand side because back in 2022, our CDC decided to change the rules on us. They saw that so many children were missing all of those important milestones that we're just going to change the milestones to fit the kids. And not ask the question, why are they missing their milestones? We'll just make them fit. How smart does that sound? Not only did they took crawling out of the milestones. I'll tell you right now, one of the things we emphasize most to mamas with littles is do not let them bypass crawling. In fact, you should, as an adult, get on the floor in your house and crawl around yourself and find out what are they going to encounter. Our room looks a lot different from this vantage point than it does from this vantage point. You find safety hazards, right? I can't tell you how many times I walk around this office and I pick up paper clips, okay? Because we paper clip a lot of things together, and I'm freaking out because I don't want one of these littles to stick a paper clip in their mouth. So I'm constantly looking underneath tables trying to get coins, because coins fall out of people's pockets here all the time. It's like raining money. It's awesome. And, so I have to pick up coins, pennies, quarters, so they don't end up in kids' mouths. Paper clips. But you, as an adult, you should experience your house on your all fours. But the reason we do that is because I think it's really important to have these babies moving and crawling as they were intended. It's really this, but they're on all fours. That's an important mechanism to get this healthy and right, okay? That cross-crawl pattern, that's why swimming's so good for us, okay? Same. So CDC has been pushing back these developmental milestones, but it doesn't change the way our bodies were intended to grow and develop. Movement and motor function works directly with immune drainage and gastrointestinal drainage. We need that movement to feed those systems, okay? So we don't let kids sit. We put them into the sports. We put them into the activities. You know, the iPads and the stuff. I mean, I'm not gonna lie, I loved my Atari when I was a kid, and I loved my PlayStation when I was less than a kid for many, many years. But it's not a substitute for getting out and getting that exercise and getting out into nature and doing the things that we need to do, okay? We've got to be moving, all right? All of the others, you know, we said crawling they got rid of. All of the other milestones they pushed back by about 6 months, okay? Let's just change the milestones, not to ask the questions while the kids have them to begin with. All right, we've gotten through 4 steps of 7, believe it or not. Here's the biggie. I said, you know, living naturally is simple, but it's not easy. Okay, it's simple, but it's not easy. You got to be prepared to allow your children to be sick and do it without medicine. Okay? Let them be sick and do it without medicine. This book in the middle is written by Dr. Josh Axe. Josh Axe has one of the fastest growing health and wellness websites known on planet Earth at the moment. He is a chiropractor. He has done an amazing job of putting together oodles and oodles and oodles of information. But he wrote this book called Eat Dirt. Guess what? We have found that the best way to build an immune system that is strong and healthy is to experience our world. Experience it. Get it on your hands. You know? Rub it on your body. Cool with that. You know? That's gross. I just have my hands in it. But I'm a firm believer of experiencing our environment. You know, we jokingly say, what doesn't kill us makes us stronger. But it's not a joke. It's serious. You know, Josh Axe is talking about leaky gut here. But he says the leaky gut may be the root cause to all of your health problems and the surprising steps to cure it. Leaky gut is a big deal, right? How our gut functions is a big deal. And when our gut is exposed to a lot of different environmental factors, it's strong. And when it's not exposed to those, or it's exposed to antibiotics a lot, we weaken the gut. The wall of the gut becomes leaky. Let's back up. Physiology lesson, real quick. When I used to teach anatomy and physiology over at Coastal, and we talked about the alimentary canal, which is basically the entire canal from your mouth to your anus, right? The entire canal of the gut. Think of that as being outside the body. It's outside the body. What goes in eventually comes out. Yes, it's passing through a tube, but you remember those toys? I don't know, some of you are a little younger in the room, but remember the toys you used to go to the counter at the convenience store and they'd have that little water balloon looking thing and you'd hold it and it would shoot out of your hands? Do y'all remember that thing? You'll see them every now and then. Yeah, and you'd squeeze it and it would go. Well, it was built like a balloon. There's water in it, but there's actually a hole that passes through the middle of it, right? You can put your finger through the middle of it and not get wet. The alimentary canal is the same thing. If our fingers were long enough, we could potentially stick our finger up and in and touch. It's outside the body. It just happens to be located on the inside. So we want to keep things outside. We only want to let the nutrients pass into the body, but they have to pass through the wall of the gut. So the wall of the gut is designed intelligently to allow certain things to come through and keep other things out. When we have an unhealthy gut, that's what it means to become leaky, because now the spaces available for things to pass through become larger. And now the things that were never intended to come into the body get to come through that gut wall and change your physiology and your chemistry. That's what they mean by leaky gut. Having a nice healthy gut with probiotics and all of these things can help to promote less leakage and therefore a healthier physiology and healthy body. So that's what Josh Axe is talking about there. But basically he says this: not all exposures to germs and bacteria are inherently bad. We need these exposures. We need these exposures to develop an immune system, and we're going to talk about how the immune system works in a little bit. Fever is actually a beneficial process. Cough is an important reflex. So when our kids are sick, the symptoms that they display: runny nose, cough, diarrhea, fever. Those things are an intelligent process by the body meant to fight. And when we treat our children with suppressants, cough suppressants, decongestants, cold medicines, and we suppress the body's innate inborn response to fight, who are we fighting for? So let's use fever as an example. We were all taught when we were young, you never drink stagnant water, right? So if you're out camping or you get lost in the woods and you find a water source, if it's stagnant, you don't want to drink it. Why? Because it's gross, but there's stuff growing in there that might not be good for the body. So what do we do to it to make it safe? Boil it, right? We cook it. We're going to take it outside its normal temperature range. We're going to boil it, and that's going to degrade or kill whatever might be in there that might be harmful, so that then it makes it safe for us. The body's natural innate way to do that is called fever. The body knows, and when I say knows, we run different fevers based on the organism that we experience. Okay? Viral fevers will often run hotter. Bacterial fevers may run lighter. So it just really depends on what you experience, and the body knows the difference. It will run different fevers for different stuff because the body's intelligent, and it knows that at 37 degrees Celsius, which is 98.6 degrees, that's our body's normal temp. Those are often very optimal temperatures for the life of the organism that is causing the infection. So the body goes, well, if that's optimal, guess what? I'm going to heat up the world around it and give my immune system time. So basically, when we heat up the body, we change the physiology of the organism. It depresses the organism's physiology while our immune system has time to get to action and work for us. Okay? Now, I don't want you just to take my word for these things. I like research. So I put a couple research articles on here. This one, it came out of a journal article by the name of Gut. I think that was Gut. No, Gut was a different one. Anyway, that one, I forget where, I can't read it from here because it's just not a great picture. But basically it says, let fever do the job. Let fever do its job. By the way, anybody know where fever starts? What temperature fever starts? 100.4. Yep, at 100.4. So anything less than 100.4, by the way, is not a fever. It could just be normal oscillations in body temp. Okay? Even if body temp typically runs low, like I'm a low one. 98.6 is not my normal. I'm usually somewhere in that 97, right? But nonetheless, it says let the fever do its job. Fever's intelligent. It's also, once it comes down, does not mean that it's not coming back. Fever is cyclical. And guess what, mamas? It usually spikes at night. Okay? So here's the way it was taught to me, and here's the analogy I want you to think of at fever. It is cyclical, so the body says, all right, I've got an organism, I'm going to run a fever, and I'm going to fight. And it will spike that fever, and what happens to our kiddos when it spikes the fever most of the time?
They want to sleep.
They want to sleep. Good. Let them. It's energetically expensive to run a fever. So you feel run down. You have this fatigue or malaise. All your job is to do is watch with a watchful eye, and you're looking for extreme lethargy, extreme dehydration. I mean, we want to keep them hydrated and those kinds of things as well, but you want to watch it. And you will see that literally it cycles. It'll burn, 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 and then it'll drop off. The body's going, all right, we've burned this thing up. Now let me check in. And while it drops, the body, the immune system, is checking in going, how'd we do? How'd we do? Oh, we still got a job to do? Boom, back up, and it's going to cycle again. And it's going to burn, 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 and then it's going to come back down and check back in. It will continue to cycle until the body thinks it's ready. Okay. Now, when do you need to worry? When do you need to worry? I know you mamas are pretty darn healthy. Where do you worry with a fever?
If it's like extremely lethargic and they can't keep liquid.
Is there a number that you think of?
104. Yeah, typically where I'm like,
I
okay.
agree with that. Did I move my, oh, it's right here. I can't find my water. About that 103 to 104 is starting, most people's spidey senses
there.
start to kind of go off at about the 103 to 104. You know, there are ways to naturally kind of cool the body back down, the washcloths and you know, tepid baths and those kinds of things. But really and truly, here's another thing that was impressed upon me early in my education, and that is the human body has two functions, as all living things do: reproduce and survive. Okay? If we have an inborn, innate mechanism for survival like fever, never is the body going to outdo itself. We're never going to run a fever that's going to off us. So when we do the research and we find the stories of a little one passing because of a heavy fever, what we find is that there were usually other circumstances involved. Running a fever, sitting in a hot car. Okay, so they couldn't, you know, express themselves fully. You know, there was exertion, there was a hot car, there was some other situation, some other thing that led to that detrimental event. And as horrible as it is, then the fever gets blamed. Then there's the ones that say, well, my child has seizures when we have a high fever. Febrile seizures are a real thing, and they're scary as heck. I've never personally seen one, like witnessed one face to face, but they're scary as heck. And so obviously when there's a someone who is prone to those seizures, those parents need to be a little more aware. But we even know that those seizures are not detrimental. As scary as they can be, they're not detrimental. In fact, don't take my word for it. I have. Now, granted, you know, in the world of social media, everybody can be an expert, but this guy, he wears a stethoscope around his neck. He is an ER doctor. Okay.
4 myths about your child's fever that every parent should know. Let's go. Number 1, temperatures of 99 or 100 are considered low-grade fevers. This is not true. Nothing is a fever until it gets above 100.4, even if your child usually runs low. Number 2, fevers are bad and dangerous and cause brain damage or seizures. Actually, fever is your child's defense mechanism against infection. There are some illnesses that can cause brain damage and fever, like meningitis, but it's not the fever that's causing the brain damage. As for febrile seizures, only 4% of children are susceptible. The other 96% will never get a seizure with any fever level. So it's not the fever, it's the child. Number 3, all fevers should be treated with fever medication such as Tylenol or ibuprofen. As I already said, fever is your body's defense mechanism against infection, so a fever should only be treated if your child looks uncomfortable. We're treating just to make them feel better in the moment. And number 4, if the fever doesn't come down with medication, the cause is serious. Medications for fever will only bring it down 1 or 2 degrees at most. So if your child has a high fever, it's not expected that their temperature will normalize after medication. And this has no bearing on whether the cause is serious or not. 4 myths about your child's fever.
All right. So again, when we see the expression of symptoms, and in the case of fever, what we see is a child who looks miserable. Heck, I will say this. Many times my kids had fevers and they didn't seem miserable at all. You know, let it roll, you know. But when they do have the fever where it seems miserable, you're not going to tell them, let's honor this. Let's go to rest. You know, even if you want to play, let's go rest. Let's let your body do what it's supposed to do. Keep a watchful eye. Keep them hydrated, because we do lose more water when we're running fever. You don't have to overdress them. Give them a blanket. Let them dress normally, because they're going to wax and wane between hot and cold. They're going to feel miserable, and guess what? If they're young enough, they're going to make us as adults feel miserable too, right? So let's be honest. Are we treating the symptoms? Or are we going to, you know, are we just trying to make life easy for ourselves, I guess is what it comes down to, by helping our children feel better. We think we're doing them justice. We know we're helping ourselves too, because we don't have to deal with a kid who's grumpy and not feeling well, but we have to keep that in mind, okay? Also, you know, in 2020, we had this thing called COVID that happened. Y'all remember that? And this thing didn't exist on my wall before COVID, all right? But we saw this huge, everyone gravitated to the gel sanitizers. Let's make mud on our hands. And they gravitated to antibacterial soaps. Please understand, those things don't come along without consequences either. All right, so you know, FDA has issued a final rule on safety and effectiveness of antibacterial soaps. Basically, they said take them off the market. Number one, they're not that effective. It's just as effective to wash your hands under the faucet with soap. It's about, this is what actually gets the stuff off your hands. It's not the stuff that you're using, it's the action of this, right? So they found that not only did the antibacterial stuff not work, but our skin is the largest organ in your body, and it absorbs everything. So triclosan is the chemical substance in antibacterial soaps that gives it its antibacterial nature. And now we have this huge spike in testing, excreting triclosan through your urine. So I mean, it's getting into our kids' bodies as well and making changes in their chemical makeup inside. So you got to keep that in mind. So when we're looking at symptoms of our kiddos who are sick, just understand that those symptoms are our body's defense mechanism and the way our body fights. We want to cough because cough is expelling things from the lungs and getting them up and out. We want to have diarrhea. It's expelling things from the digestive tract and flushing it out. It's literally our second line of defense. Our first line of defense is our mucous membranes and our skin. But once it's inside, then the body goes, boom, we got to get as much of that out of there as we can, and that's where the symptoms come from. So if we are taking the NyQuil, sleep better, feel better, treat everything kind of medication, all we're doing is fighting on the side of the bugs. Okay, it makes us feel better, but it doesn't get rid of the problem. All right, so let's talk about the immune system a little bit. We've talked about how we should behave, but I want you guys to understand some of the science behind this. In this office, we talk about the nervous system as having two halves, a gas pedal half and a brake pedal half. The gas pedal half of the nervous system is that fight or flight response. We call it the sympathetic nervous system. The brake pedal half is the rest digest function, and it is it's the brake pedal, the parasympathetic half. Well, guess what? We have two halves to our immune system as well. They call it the Th1 side and the Th2 side. And what you need to understand about the Th systems, T stands for T cells. Those are our immune fighting cells. H stands for helper cells. So we're talking about our T helper cells that are meant to fight. And we have the T helper cells that are associated with the upregulation of our rest and digest half of our nervous system, which is, by the way, when we're talking about kids, when we're in growth and repair mode, we want to have a little bit of a dominance towards the Th1 side. It is also what we refer to as the expressive half of the immune system. What we mean by expressive is that means when it kicks in, we express ourselves. The nose runs, the cough, the diarrhea. This is the one that creates the symptoms that we visualize that are also nasty and the ones that our kiddos hate to experience, right? But this is the side of the nervous system. You see, it's a slow, long-term, and lifelong. It is the slow-building side of the nervous system, but it's the one that when we are exposed to these bugs and it kicks into action, you have lifelong immunity, right? So this is if we had chicken pox, which that's a whole nother story. If we contracted chicken pox and we beat it, which most of us do, we have a lifelong immunity to chicken pox from now on, right? This is what we call the cell-mediated side of our immune system. The Th2 side is called the humoral side of your immune system. It is also associated with that sympathetic fight or flight response, the upregulating half of the nervous system, but it's suppressive in nature. It's quick, it's short-term. The antibodies that are made during that immune response don't last forever, so it declines over time. When we have Th2 responses, rather than just being the cough, the runny nose, and all of those, we start to experience more symptoms like allergies, whether it be foodborne or environmental. Asthmas, it moves from allergies into the chest and becomes asthma, or the skin stuff. So the kiddos that really struggle with allergies, asthmas, and the skin stuff, these are kiddos whose Th2 side of their immune system is overactive. So what you have to understand about these two systems is that when one side goes up, it produces chemical mediators to suppress the other side. So we have a tendency at times, depending on our lifestyle stressors, to get stuck in one versus another. We want balance. We want them both to work. But there are things that create an imbalance in these systems. In our kiddos, C-section, immunizations, lack of breastfeeding. I don't know, I think I forget something here. Oh, it's right here. Vaccines, I forgot I put it in here. C-sections, vaccines, antibiotics, lack of breastfeeding or formula feeding will create a little who gets stuck in a Th2 dominant immune system. And if they're stuck or more dominant Th2, that means they have a suppressive Th1. Okay? So how in the world, what does C-section have to do with getting stuck in the Th2? How would that happen? Well, number one, we believe in birth trauma. I have a study that was done by a group of osteopaths, and they looked at 100 births. Now, I know 100's not a lot. When it comes to scientific studies, 100 is a tiny number. But they looked at 100 births, and within minutes of that birth, they examined the babies, and they found that 99% of those babies had some level of birth trauma. Most of that birth trauma comes from the head and neck, because mamas, if you've ever had a baby and you know what it feels like to go through the birth process, the same forces that are exerted on your body were experienced by the baby's head and neck as it descended down through the birth canal. Okay? So the first birth trauma is often going to be upper cervical. Second most common is lower sacral, and then you would get combinations of those throughout. So, and it was something like 99% had at least one area of trauma, 97% had two, and then it was like 87% had three. I mean, the study's incredible. So what we find, however, is with birth trauma, in the chiropractic world, we know that when the upper cervical, which is the most common birth trauma, is affected, it often downregulates our vagus nerve function. Our vagus nerve is one of the cranial nerves that comes down from our head through our neck and into our thorax. It's the one that gets all wonky when we're on roller coasters at Carowinds and makes us vomit. But it's part of, it's basically like the brake pedal of the nervous system. It's the one that controls a lot of what we call our parasympathetic nervous system. When our parasympathetics are downregulated, that jacks us up into a sympathetic dominance. Okay? Th2. So if we turn down the brakes, everything is gas. Gas pedal is the sympathetic nervous system, so that's how we get stuck there. I have a study over here, and because that is a horrible picture, I had to print it so I could read it to you. This talks about the vagus nerve and how it innervates the gut and how it helps to control a healthy, balanced immune system. And what these researchers found out is this. Recent evidence suggests that the vagus or vagal innervation of the GI tract also plays a major role in controlling intestinal immune activation. Indeed, the vagus nerve electrical stimulation potentially reduces intestinal inflammation, meaning when they stimulate the vagus nerve, it reduces the inflammatory process in the gut. But when it's depressed, so it says here, whereas vagotomy, like basically if you sever the vagus nerve, they call that a vagotomy, that means you turn off the vagus nerve, has a reverse effect. So they're saying that a down-regulated vagus nerve creates an inflammatory gut and therefore interference in the immune system. Ladies and gentlemen, 70% of our immune system is tied up into our gut. Okay, 70%. Okay, we call that stuff GALT, gut-associated lymphatic tissue. 70% of our immune system is in our gut. The rest of it's up in our mucous membranes, places where you're going to come into a lot of exposure. Nose, mouth, ears, eyes, open orifices, mucous membranes. All right? So anywhere where we have an open orifice or a membrane, we know we're going to have a huge accumulation of immune tissues. Right? So when our kids used to get sick, the doctor would say, oh, their glands are swollen. There weren't glands at all. They were talking about the lymph nodes, because they are lymphatic tissues. All right? And they are our immune system. But our gut has tons of them. Right? 70% of it's tied up there. When we talk about interference in this office, oftentimes we talk about nervous system interference. When we have an imbalance leading to an inflammatory process and therefore interference in this office, interference equals faulty signaling between the brain and body. We cannot be as healthy as we were intended to be with interference present. Okay?
Can you fix that?
We can. Okay. The missing link, thank you, is the nervous system. We call the nervous system the harmonizer of the immune system. We think of, and when we learn it, we think of them as separate systems. We have come to understand that the more researchers try to separate immune system function from the nervous system function, they cement the fact that you can't. They work in harmony with one another. They are together. So it's neuroimmunity, brain-based immune system. It controls all of our plumbing and drainage. That's why movement is key, and it helps keep us balanced, organized, and responsive when it's healthy. Okay? So what are we going to do about it? Number one, the reason we throw the chiropractic stuff in, or the nervous system stuff in there, is because in this office we believe that interference to the nervous system is one of the number one contributors to a decline in health. So in this office, we focus chiropractic first. That's why it was one of the first 4 pillars, making sure that that nervous system is healthy. We can test it, and then we can work to correct it when we find that it needs correcting. However, I want you ladies to be prepared with ways to help support this whole process. So we've given you all this little handout, and we hoped that they would be prettier and in color, but unfortunately we've been down in our printer for a couple days. So what we will do is we will connect with you. We will send you this in a nice color format, or we'll make some for you and we'll make sure we get them to you better than this, because this is just not who we are. I like things that are better than this. But if you'll notice in this, we're going to talk about nature's medicine cabinet, because when our kiddos are sick, the first thing we want to do is go find a solution. And if you'll just remember that we're going to practice first and foremost the top 4 pillars. Number 1, get adjusted. Why? Because a healthy nervous system promotes a healthy immune system. We're going to promote making sure that we really pay attention to sleep, exercise and play, and cleaning up our kitchens and the stuff that's going into our kiddos. And I say kitchens because it's under the kitchen sinks, it's in the foods. One of the things I glossed over was, the toxins in our foods, the colors, the chemicals that we can't pronounce, all of the stuff that's in our, our prepared foods that we shouldn't be eating. But then on top of that, you'll notice right underneath that, we talk about everyday boosters and immune system builders. These are things that we can take as just part of a healthy lifestyle on a daily basis. So we're looking at making sure that our foods are whole foods, making sure that our vitamins are whole food vitamins. What does a whole food vitamin mean? Anybody? Why does it matter? Not synthetic is absolutely true. So they're not made in a chemistry lab. What they do, like whole food nutrition, and by the way, the best place to get that is to go talk to your nutrition stores. Ask Nutrition is down here at Carolina Forest. I personally love Bay Naturals all the way at the beach. It's at 79th or 76th Avenue, right beside what used to be Steinmark. Steinmark's gone now. But you can go down there. They have experts who are going to help you find this. But basically, whole food nutrition is where we take our whole foods, we desiccate them, we dry them, and we turn them into powders, and then we give them to you in a pill form. So you're getting all of the building blocks, and nothing is synthetic. Okay? And they do make whole food vitamins. Obviously, we can blend our foods in smoothies. But I believe there's 4 core things that need to be going in our bodies if we're going to supplement it. Specifically, whole food vitamins, multis, omega-3s, vitamin D, and probiotics. That's just a good, nice, basic 4 that covers all the bases. Omega-3s are great for balancing our healthy fats, which is good for healthy hearts. Our probiotics help to make sure that our gut is healthy and we're not getting leaky gut syndromes. Probiotics you can get over the counter in capsule form, in liquid form, in powder forms. I will say I was taught that if they ain't refrigerated, they're probably not the best, because those things are live organisms. Probiotics are bacteria. They're just healthy. We call it flora. You know, we have flora and fauna. Flora means flowery stuff. That's just bacteria, right? So they're flowery animals. But we want to have healthy gut flora. Oftentimes our lives, the way that we eat, and the things like being exposed to antibiotics, they destroy our healthy flora. So we have to put it in. But you can also eat probiotics. I make kombucha at home and in a warehouse. Kombucha.
If you look for the refrigerated probiotics, the rest of them are not necessarily refrigerated.
I've just always heard,
Uh-huh.
and again, go ask the other experts who sell this stuff on a regular basis, that I've always heard that if they're refrigerated, they're going to be better because we got to keep them alive, right? If they're not refrigerated, they're not alive. But you know, again, I don't have research to back that one up. I'm sure some of these other companies that have non-refrigerated stuff will show me up. I don't know any, but anyway, that's just what I was taught. The probiotics, you can eat them. So things like kombucha or other fermented foods. You'll notice fermented foods come over here. The reason we eat fermented foods is because they have that good bacteria in them. All right. So things like fermented cabbage, which is called sauerkraut. You know, you've seen the Bragg's apple cider vinegar, and it says with the mother in it. The mother is the good stuff. Don't throw out the mother with the. You said baby with the bathwater. Anyway, go. We need our antioxidants. So things like vitamin C, vitamin D, zinc, vitamin A. We can get a lot of those from our fruits and vegetables if we are so inclined. I mean, hey, my wife was an expert at sneaking vegetables into my kids' foods, right? There are books dedicated to sneaking vegetables and fruits into your children's diets. So if you have some that are not, they're just not vegetable eaters, you can actually get them in there. But I'll tell you also, for us, the smoothies were a big one for my kiddos, man. We get greens in them. You know, you can put the right amount of fruit to vegetable ratio and get a whole lot into a smoothie and they'll never know they're there, right? And that's where you can add the omega-3s and you can add the vitamins and they don't even know it's there. It's wonderful, right? You just make it a fun little drink and, hey, we got our special drink for the morning, let's go for it. And they get their servings of their vitamins and minerals there. Right, all right, so moving on. Also, I guess in the everyday boosters and immune system builders, also there's this idea of seasonality. So like during the winter months, you can go for the warmer stuff, which happens to be like the bone broths, the fermented foods. They are warm type foods. In the winter months, when do our fruits and vegetables really blossom? In the warm months, right? Those are when you go for the colder foods. It's kind of intelligent, you know. We were supposed to eat what was in season and there was a reason for the season, all right? Then we have down here, this is the stuff that you don't do every day. This is the stuff that we're going to now substitute for the medicine cabinet. This is where I'm not the biggest expert, and so I try to find other experts around me because I know nothing of homeopathy. I will say when my kids were little and we were using homeopathics, it was things for like the ears, the teething discomfort. There are companies out there that you can, like at Bay Naturals, where you can find the homeopathics on the shelves. But basically, let's talk about what a homeopathic is. Does anybody not know what homeopathy is? Okay, we're all pretty familiar. So the way they make, just the way I understand it, is if we take a tincture of a plant that now has a particular signature that we want in it, they basically have this tincture and then they dilute it 1% to 99%, and then they do that. They take the new one and they dilute that 1% to 99%, and they do it 30 times. So essentially, by the time you get to the final product of a 30 dilution homeopathic, you have very little of the original substance in it, but there's an energy signature, and somehow homeopathy works on this. We treat like with like. So things that would normally cause a particular response in the body, you actually give it to it in this energetic amount, and it's supposed to be effective for that. So we have homeopathics on each one of these different symptomatologies. So like aconite and pulsatilla and chamomilla, which chamomilla comes from the chamomile plant. We all know chamomile, but they actually have a homeopathic as well. Belladonna. I can't pronounce that one. Looks like those are the ones for earache and fever. But we do have, one of our practice members is a naturopath. So unfortunately in South Carolina, you cannot practice naturopathy. In fact, it was funny. I went yesterday, so when I was doing some research to prepare, I went into some homeopathy things because it's where I feel the least prepared. I just don't know much about homeopathy, and I found South Carolina actually has an organization for naturopathic doctors, people who practice homeopathy, and it has 4 members because they can't be licensed in this state. They were all on the board. I thought it was interesting, and they're all in Charleston. So, but we do have one of our practice members who has studied homeopathy. She would know a lot about that. So if you guys want more of those kinds of things, we can always put together a little 30-minute talk on them. But for these instances, most times when you go into these health food stores or into even the drug portions of Target or Walmart, they will have a section of homeopathy, and it basically says, for this, use this one for. So it's pretty well laid out for you, and I think the research is pretty abundant online as well. Okay, essential oils. We have essential oil experts, sitting in the room, or an essential oil expert. She's the one that provided all the beautiful smells for us today. But in our when my kids were little, we did use a lot of the essential oils. When they were running fevers, when they weren't feeling well, did a lot of things on their feet. Oregano oil on the feet, put the socks on, go to bed, and it's amazing how they would just normally wake up feeling great. Now, granted, I'm adjusting them first because that's just what we do. In fact, I trained my kids so well after I learned to adjust them, and after I learned how to work with my kiddos. At the age of 2, when they were 2, my wife got violently sick with a virus, and she couldn't get off the couch, and she was just mucus coming out of every orifice. And I remember my 2-year-old going, "Hey, Mommy, did you get adjusted?" Right? So they were already well trained that at the first sign of anything, we were adjusting them, because I'll be honest, as a chiropractor, when I go home, the last people that I think to take care of are my own kids. Most of the kids in this office get adjusted much more regularly than mine do, because anyway, it's just the way it worked out. But they knew when they weren't feeling well, the first thing we did was get adjusted. Then we went for the more natural remedies. And these are the types of things that we use. So we have a whole list of essential oils, homeopathics, garlic oil, massages, warm compresses, local honey, using humidifiers and neti pots. Anybody ever use a neti pot? I will tell you, on littles like this, their nasal passages are too tiny, but the neti pot you'll find in the section of the pharmacy where they have all the nasal sprays and stuff. But basically it's a saline wash or an irrigation for the nose. I used to think that the little blue pot was the better one, which is, you see the little pot, you make the salt water mixture, and you have to literally pour it up one nostril and down the other. Many people, when I tell that, who've never experienced it, they give me this look like, oh God, I can't even imagine. And that's kind of how it feels at first, because you literally feel like you're pouring water up into your face until it makes the turn and comes right back out. So there's a definite way to do it better. For me, let's just go ahead and do it. For me, the neti pot, if you'll just lean forward, open your mouth a little bit, so just in case some of it gets into your mouth, it's going to come out your mouth. But if you just tilt your head, it goes right up, and it just pours right out the other side. But what I found in the littles, their noses are so small, their nostrils are so small. It's a little harder. You got to be a little bit more delicate with it, and then your kids have to really trust you. They may never trust you again. But they have to really trust you. But I found that my kids really loved it once they got used to doing it. And then I also found that the one that I thought would be more difficult to use, which is the squeeze bottle, is actually better. So if I can make a plug for Neti, they have the blue pot, it's gravity, you pour it up your nose. The squeeze bottle seems to work better. Okay, you can control it a little better. So, cough and congestion, you're literally going to just run that stuff through those nasal passages and let it clear everything out. Love it, love it, love it. Elderberry, we have companies in this area that make phenomenal elderberry syrup. One of them is the power of elderberry. I also found that it was really easy to make ourselves. So, I mean, you don't have to go out and buy it. There are great recipes for it, and it makes your home smell beautiful. It's awesome.
The Good Day Sunshine store in downtown Conway sells dried elderberries. They're extremely affordable, like way cheaper than online, than anywhere else.
And Bay Naturals has them dried. So, I mean, I think Lori would go get them, the dried ones, kind of, and then you're just going to boil them, cook them to death. Like we do here in the South, we cook everything to death, but you just cook it to death, you strain it, you add all the other herbs and spices into it. It's wonderful. It smells very seasonal. It's very Christmassy smelling. And then you're going to dose it with a lot of the raw local honey. The reason we like our raw local honey is because the local stuff has, our bees are on our flowers. So if you're the ones that are prone to the allergies and asthmas, our honey has all that stuff already in it. And you know, they say that a spoonful of your local honey will help you with your allergies just in and of itself every day. But then we've got, colloidal silver. Now this one was the one that I didn't know about this when my kids were little, so it's still one that I haven't studied much. Do you use colloidal?
I use it for ear infections and pink eye.
And so you literally drop it into the ear, drop it into the eye. It's safe to ingest. I've started using it a little bit more, and when I'm kind of feeling down, just a couple spoonfuls of the colloidal silver.
The more I learn, I used to give it more regularly, and the more that I've learned is that it can deplete copper if you overuse it. So now I only use it if they are showing symptoms of ear infection, pink eye, or even anything viral.
It's an antiviral, something in the metals, but again, you're consuming metal. I mean, it's got silver in it. So again, these are fighters meant to be used when needed, not to be used every day. Okay. Oil of oregano, that was one we used to do quite a bit. Garlic, great. Golden seal, great. So just do some research on these things and find what resonates with you and just use them. But let the medications be the last ditch effort, right? We're not going to be 100% all the time, and nobody expects you to. Also, as mamas, let your mama spidey sense guide the process, right? I mean, we all have this innate wisdom within us to know when something seems right and when it doesn't seem right. We get that from people around us who give us information. We get that from our doctors. Sometimes we're like, I don't know about that. That just doesn't sound right. So if it doesn't resonate with you, there's a reason why it doesn't resonate with you. You need to go and figure that out. But and also, I mean, it's okay to be afraid when your kiddos aren't feeling well and they're really down and out. It's hard. It is not easy. Because when your kiddos are miserable, everyone around them is miserable. So just remember to fight the hard fight. In the long run, it will work out better. With adjustments, I can tell you, I've had so many people, and it's hard with employees and those kinds of things, when patients call in to cancel. I don't feel good, doc. I don't want to come in. We've taught our employees to be very encouraging and go, look, I don't care if you come in your pajamas, just come. And here's why. At the first sign of colds and infections, when we get adjusted, one of two things usually happens. When we change the way that the neurology affects the immune system, we usually get two things. Either they wake up the next day and go, wow, that never came on. Or they wake up the next day, it accelerates the mess out of that expressive side of the nervous system. It kicks them from T2 or T1 to T2, and they express like it's coming out of every orifice. But it's fast, and usually within 24 hours it's gone. It runs its course, and it is gone. And I've found that to be true my entire practice once I started taking care of kids, once I started taking care of adults who finally would listen to my recommendations and roll in here. Our statement in here is, look, we've got a private room over here because you can see we adjust out here. If you're not feeling well, we'll sneak you in, put you in the private room. One of us docs will step away. We'll go adjust you and send you on your way really quickly. That's just the way we like to take care of things. And then, of course, all of these immune system fighters get to be the icing on the cake, and it's done. Okay? And that's what I found to be true for my kids. Coming back to my kids, when they were sick, after I started working with them, I told you Bobby Finley kind of started the process. One of his patients ran the daycare that my children were in, and when my kids were sick, she would call my wife, who would call me. I would leave work, I'd go to their daycare, she'd pull them out of class, I'd adjust them on the floor of her office, and we'd send them back to class. That's just how we roll. Right? And my kids, I promise you, had the best attendance out of anybody in the school. All right? Sequence matters, guys. Here's step 7. Sequence matters. We gotta pour into the health pillars first. Make sure the nervous system's healthy. Make sure they're getting their sleep. Make sure they're eating clean. They're exercising plenty. The boosters and the builders give you extra credit. The immune fighters, only as necessary. But the sequence really matters. We've got to be good on the inside first for all of this other stuff to work, okay? It just maximizes the effort that we're putting in when we do 1 through 4 first. I'm gonna finish with a little quick story. In this office, we don't guess, we test. You were asking about the correction of subluxation earlier. We measure it, okay? And so we have a really cool technology that can work with adults, it can work with kids, and the goal is to measure how effective the nervous system is communicating with the body by measuring how the body functions. In this instance, we're using skin temperature and heart rate variability. And so skin temperature helps us understand the connection of the brain to the organ systems. The idea is this: in a healthy world, the skin temperature on the right side of the spine should be the same as that on the left. When we see that the body's not able to regulate skin temperature properly, that tells us there's an issue at the level of the skin temperature defect. Skin temperature defects show up as colors on our scans. Green is a mild defect or deficit, blue moderate, red severe. This kid needs some help, right? Okay. Got a lot of color up at C1. We call that the master switch. This is where everything happens because C1 affects the brainstem. We have a lot of color up in that T1, 2, 3, and 4. Heart-lung fields. Okay? Heart and lung fields. Chest. Lots of chesty stuff. L1, 2, and 3, gut, lower gut. Poop centers. Okay? This kid's struggling pretty bad. Here's his story. His name's Carson. This comes from his mama. His mama wrote this for us. She said, "We were ready to give chiropractic a try with our son because we had nothing left to lose. We were at the doctor's office 3 to 4 times a month on 3 different medications dealing with constant sickness. He was diagnosed with virus-induced asthma, and so any little cold would go straight to his lungs and RSV-like symptoms. When starting with Impact Chiropractic, we noticed how much each staff member truly cared for our son, and they've been so welcoming in this family-like atmosphere, and starting chiropractic care with our son has changed our world. He's had 1 runny nose since starting, and that's all it was. For the first time, it didn't lead to his lungs causing any more problems. Now we get to enjoy our evenings with our son instead of giving him a 30-minute nebulizer treatment, making sure to give him all of the other medications that were needed." Kid got off all the medications. Family's happy. You know, it's not just can we change the kiddo's physiology, but think of how that trickles down into the lives of our families. That's what she's saying here. The stress that Impact Chiropractic has taken off of us is amazing. Dr. Turner talks about how the body can heal itself, and we get to watch it with every single visit. We appreciate everything they've done for us and are forever grateful. Like, we took a kid who literally every time he got sick ended up in the ER. Okay? And we helped to stabilize his nervous system, stabilize his immune system, and help him to get off of all that crud. Okay? Check out his scans after we work with him. Picture's worth 1,000 words. I don't have to say much. This is Carson. First, second, doesn't always look perfect through the process, and third. Okay. Where there's hope, there's healing. We don't guess, we like to test. So we don't guess with anybody's child, I don't guess with adults. I mean, we do these tests all the time. It's not always perfect. It's not always this magical, okay? It's not always this magical, but it's worth it every time. Because I'm a firm believer that when we can get the nervous system on track and get the immune system on track, life gets better. I just can't always tell you what better is going to look like. For this family, it was tremendous, okay? So, we always want to leave you with some action steps. You guys have the things in your hand to take home with you. But number one, if you're sitting in this room, that means that you have concerns for your kiddos. You're concerned parents. You should be. So continue to ask questions, not just of us, of all your health providers. Remember, when you go to your doctors, they work for you. If you don't get the answers that you want or need, then go find somebody else, right? Follow the 7 steps that we put in here. You don't have to do anything perfectly. Remember, it's a journey. My wife and I certainly didn't do it perfectly, and it was a learning process. And again, I'm still learning. That's why I can't tell you about all of the homeopathics. I know they're good. I just don't have that knowledge yet. But most importantly, what I can do for you is help you to get scanned. You know, get yourselves or your kiddos checked for subluxation, because subluxation affects the way we live our lives. It affects the health of our bodies, and it certainly affects our immune system. So you can get scanned. So with that being said, I do that all here. So with that said, I want to say thank you to all of you who attended. For those of you who are new to this office, I want to give you a special. You know, we want to make sure that everybody gets to benefit. You gave me all your time. You know, there's nothing more important than time. But we do have a special. Normally, to become a patient in this office, if you're an adult, can run as much as $260. For a kid, it's at least $120. So to take, you know, I'm a firm believer that procrastination is the thief of our health, because we always say to ourselves, I'll get to that tomorrow, and tomorrow never comes. So I do have a special offer, but to keep you from procrastinating, it's only good for today. All right. So what we do is we take that what would normally be the $260 or the $120, and we drop it all the way down to $47 a person. So if you would like to be part of our family, and you would like to go through our process, and by the way, our process is a full consult, full exams, full report to let you know how we may be able to help. We do all of that just like we would do for a full paying $260 patient. We do it for only $47. So if you'd like to take advantage of that today, Kate is here. She can help get you on the schedule, take advantage of the $47 special. We'd love to help you and your family. I'm going to stick around for questions, okay? For anybody who has questions. For those of you who already know, love, and like us, thank you for being here and supporting this. I hope this was valuable to you. And be on the lookout for more of these. You know, I want to make them specific to movement, move well, eat well, think well as well. And start bringing you guys more content. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for being here. Yeah.
Does the immune system decline with age, or is that a myth?
Well, I would say the nervous system declines with age. So yes, the nervous system and the immune system, but there are ways to be proactive in that, right? Thank you. All right. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. I appreciate each one of you. All right. Thank you so much.
Do you have a point that's like